Welcome again to Earlswood Baptist Church House Group, and this week we're going to look at the second half of Mark chapter 4. This part of the chapter contains Mark's version of some familiar parables, and perhaps they have a slightly different twist to them. It contains a warning, and it contains an account of Jesus' control of the natural world. So our reading is Mark chapter 4, verses 21 to 41.
He said to them, "Do you bring in a lamp to put it under a bowl or a bed? Instead, don't you put it on its stand? For whatever is hidden is meant to be disclosed, and whatever is concealed is meant to be brought out into the open. If anyone has ears to hear, let them hear. Consider carefully what you hear," he continued. "With the measure you use, it will be measured to you, and even more. Whoever has will be given more. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them." He also said, "This is what the kingdom of God is like. A man scatters seed on the ground. Night and day, whether he sleeps or gets up, the seed sprouts and grows, though he does not know how. All by itself the soil produces corn, first the stalk, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. As soon as the corn is ripe, he puts the sickle to it, because the harvest has come." Again he said, "What shall we say the kingdom of God is like? Or what parable shall we use to describe it? It is like a mustard seed, which is the smallest of all seeds on earth. Yet when planted, it grows and becomes the largest of all garden plants, with such big branches that the birds can perch in its shade." With many similar parables, Jesus spoke the word to them as much as they could understand. He didn't say anything to them without using a parable, but when he was alone with his own disciples, he explained everything. That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him."
Mark continues to record some familiar parables that we probably know better from Matthew and Luke's Gospels. But Mark manages to put his own little twist on these parables, and they're both promises and warnings, and they have clear links with the Old Testament as well. First of all, there's a lamp. We know that one only too well, that our witness should be clear. But the twist is there, that the kingdom of God is here. The kingdom of God is appearing. Listen whilst you can. Don't get left behind. And then we have another sower parable. But the sickle here for the harvest reminds us of Joel 3:13, and that the great harvest occurs on the day of the Lord, but also includes a great judgment. Then we come to the mustard seed. Of course, this isn't the smallest seed, but this is a parable, not a biology lesson. If we think of Daniel 4:21 and Nebuchadnezzar and the great kingdom there, these are the sort of images that Mark is producing of the growing kingdom that starts very small but grows into something enormous. And finally, there's that little thing, as much as they could understand. How much do we understand? And we're challenged to keep growing in our faith. hope you spotted the Shakespeare play in this passage, measure for measure. This little phrase is not a call for more works as well as our faith, because everything depends on God's grace. But there is a warning here. If you grasp what Jesus is saying and go deeper and deeper into it, you'll get more and more from it. Your faith will become richer. But if you remain at a very superficial level, like many of the crowds who follow Jesus, you may even lose that basic awareness that God's at work and doing something new. Finally, we come to the authority of Jesus. The calming of the storm puts the words of the earlier parables into action. It's the same picture of the kingdom of God breaking into the world. In our generation and our time, we might read this as just a simple tale of God's power. But for the disciples, I think it was far more. We know that the Jewish people were lousy sailors, even if some were fishermen. To them, the sea brought images of chaos and evil. And if you think through the Bible, there's the creation story of the order being brought out of chaos. There's the Exodus through the sea. There's Jonah. And of course, Revelation, where it says there will be no sea in heaven, which doesn't say there will be no sea in heaven, but it does say that there will be order and not chaos. So for them, for the disciples, it says that God's kingdom has arrived. And why they are amazed at Jesus and worship him is they see that Jesus is something special, as only God can rule the sea as Jesus did. And so to us on this Tuesday, inevitably I'm linking this to us relaunching our services together, as we're called to have an open and visible faith. We need to continue to go deeper in our faith. We recognise that there's a harvest coming from small beginnings, and we trust that can be true of Earlswood. And it's a reminder and a comfort of Jesus' great power and authority that we are living in.